Hey everyone, my name is Andrew Hess. I have an idea for a big project, but let's start with a small component of it and let's do SVGs. I wanted to do a simple SVG slider, but not just show you exactly the code. I want to build it out and show you ways that you can create your own sliders, because I know once I show all of you how to do something, then you guys go and create better things than me. Let's do a slider as an SVG. All right, so let's start off with the basics. We're on a responsive Power app here. Let's add a slider. All right, we have a slider here, and let's make the slider vertical. And I want it to take up all the space. So let's see, not all that space, but all the vertical spacing. Let's see, flexible height on. All right, so we have a basic slider here. Maybe we'll pull it to the middle. I think I kind of want to pull my containers to the center. Sometimes I like to do this, and that is to do a center here, pull it center, and then maybe the width. We will change the width. What I'm going to do simply is, okay, I changed the width up here to 750. I'm going to say if screen1.size equals 1, then I want it to be the parent.width minus 10, else it's 750. So let's just take a look at that right there. So you see now I just made it fit in there. If you zoom in right there, it just fits in there just perfectly. So now I'm just going to take that width and put it on all of my containers. And that's all I'm going to do right now for setup. There are some people who are amazing with SVGs on Power Apps, way better than me. But I just wanted to show how to do this easily. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top left over here in the components, and I'm going to do a new component. And in my new component, I'm going to make this smaller. So the width, let's go down to 120. And the height, let's go to maybe 320. We could probably adjust this later on. But let's just go to 320 and let's insert a slider in here. So we'll put a slider in here, vertical. Let's just stretch it out based on all the space. And let's go to our screen. I'm going to delete this slider. I'm going to insert custom component. So you can see this is based off my component. It's a little bit smaller. If we try and make it larger, right now it's not going to resize. Really, right? Because it's based on the component. If we do flexible height, still, it's not going to resize. What I want to do is I'm going to go to the component and I'm going to insert an image on top of this slider. And it's slider 2, but I'm going to insert image on top of the slider. And I'm going to have it take up the entire space. All right, so it takes up the entire space. And in our image up here, I'm going to start simple. Now, for every SVG, you need this to start with. Data, image, well, for an image SVG, and say that it's XML. And the UTF, this is just like a universal way for, I would say, computers to understand it. So different type of computers can understand it. That's all UTF is. It's just it's Unicode transformational format at 8-bit. It's just a way to encode text. That's all it is. Now what I want to start with something super simple, and that is like a rectangle. So I want to start with a rectangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an ampersand here, and then we're going to build a rectangle, like a very simple rectangle. And to do that, I'm just going to paste this in. We now have a rectangle in here, and the width is 20, the height is 50. So let me just break down each piece of this here. So right here, data image. So this is just saying, hey, it's an SVG and it's using XML. UTF-8, this is just like a encoding language so all computers can understand it. SVG, right, scalable vector graphic. This is the width of it, the height. This URL here is just like a standard, right? So this URL here is just a standard. You're not actually going to a website or anything. This is just a standard that you have here. And then we're drawing a rectangle. That's RECT right here. We're drawing a rectangle. We're giving it an X value, a Y value, and a width and a height. And then we're filling it in with the color yellow. So that's all that is. That's how we're breaking that down. We can see we have a yellow rectangle, right? A yellow rectangle. We can move the X value. If we give it 5, we can give it 8, maybe an 8.5 to center it. So to center it right in there. So now we have a yellow rectangle here, and it is over top of our slider. So let me pull the slider up. So reorder, bring to the front. So we have a slider on top of a yellow rectangle. And maybe the yellow rectangle is not perfectly center. So let's try 9. There we go. Now it looks perfectly center. So we have a yellow rectangle, and all I'm doing is I'm replacing this gray rectangle with my yellow rectangle. And so they call that the rail. So I'm just replacing the rail with my own rectangle. All right, so that's all we did. We just made a rectangle. So let's make another rectangle inside this image. So we're gonna make another rectangle, right? Maybe we'll make this one gray. And the height, I don't want it to be so big. I want it to be maybe like a 5. Let's see if we have, we have another one that's still too big. Let's make it like a 2.5. Okay, and so this rectangle is gonna replace this circle. That's what we're gonna do now. And in order to do that, we want the Y value to be calculated, right? We don't want the Y value to be 0. We want it to be calculated, or we want it to be a variable. And what is that variable gonna be? It's gonna be our slider value. I'm gonna say double quotes, ampersand, slider2.value, ampersand, double quotes. All right, so now watch what happens when I move the slider. So you can see it's moving now. So the Y value is now calculated based off of my slider value. And I actually don't like where it's at. And I believe the height is 150. Let's look at my component here. The height is 310 here. So let's change the component. Let's say the height is 150. And let's say the width is 40. Make that a lot smaller. Let's move our slider now in that position. All right, the slider's in that position. Let's move the image in that position. And so now everything is still kind of small. Let's change the size of this rail for now, or the big circle. So on the slider, the handle size, let's change that to like a 10 maybe. So there it is now. So now we can see it kind of move in there. And let's check this out on our screen. So we can see that we have a small slider here. And you see how it kind of moves? Now the end goal is to hide the slider later on. The SVG, let's change the color of that SVG. Let's change it from gray. And maybe I'll change the fill to green. How about that? And the slider is a width of 40. Let's do the same thing. So the SVG is a width of 40. Okay, so we're looking better. We can actually see that. Maybe I'll leave it on the side for right now, just to kind of, so we can see where everything is. It's not going up all the way, and that's because, let's go to the slider, right? The slider, and change the max to 150. So now it looks like they're in sync. They're lined up pretty good. All right, so so you didn't watch me struggle, just so you didn't watch me struggle too much, I changed a couple things. I said to 145. It was kind of maximizing and taking it off screen. And then I said the slider value times 0.95. So you can see the height is 150, the height is 150. On our image, where I am, let me move me. On my image right here, you can see it's a 150. The slider is a 150, a max, and also the height is a 150. So now when I move this slider, you can see I just did times 0.95, so it doesn't kind of go off edge like the other slider does. I don't want it to go out of view, so I kind of like it like that. Now I'm going to move that square and push it over to the right. So now we're going to go to the image, the X value It's probably I don't know, a 13. Or actually, it's a width of 40, so it's probably like a 19. Let's see. See if I'm right here. So it's kind of like right there. Maybe 19 is a little too high too. So let's go to the image. So it's probably like a 17. Let's make the width a lot more. Let's make the width an 8 so we can really see that there. All right. So now the next trick is you can't just make your slider the visible false, right? As soon as you do that, then it doesn't even understand. You can't click. But what you do instead is you change the color to transparent. So the handle fill to 0, right? So now you don't even see that. The value fill, handle fill, hover fill is now a 0. So you're just making everything transparent. The pressed color, let's see, I think the press, oh, you can kind of see, I like how it turns that light blue though. The pressed color, let's make sure that's handle active. Just make sure everything, and you can just click on the words here, is clear, transparent. And the border, none, handle fill, rail fill, 0. So now you can see that we're kind of made our SVG. Now we're going to pull over our yellow bar. So the yellow bar will probably be, what, 16? No, it's like a 18. All right, so, and maybe actually it's 20. Maybe it's perfectly 20. All right, so now we have our SVG. We've replaced it with our own graphics. So now we have our own colors. We have a square here. We could probably put a border on our green square. So on this green square, what we do is we say stroke equals black, and then you say the stroke width is equal to 1. So now we should have a border on there. So you can see we have our own border. Let's make it a little bit bigger. I want the height to be a little bit bigger. Okay, so now we have green and yellow. It still kind of is pushing beyond that point, so maybe we'll drop this down to a 90. Oh, that didn't work. Let's say, let's try 140. There we go. And maybe this is now a 90. So there we go. I like how it doesn't go off screen. Let's take a look at it on our screen. So when we zoom out here, we can see that we have a scroll bar here. It's really small, but that's how I want it because I'm going to have many of them. I'm going to have many sliders. Now, the next important part, when you start having complex SVGs, there's one important piece that you need to remember, and that is encode URL. You need to put your entire SVG statement in right here. You see this? It needs to be in encode. You need to have it in code. As soon as you start getting complex, things may break. Because this was such a simple one with rectangles, it was very simple. You don't need the encode, but you will need that later on. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in the encode parentheses here. There's more that I want to do to this, and that is to add a with statement. So with, right, that is actually a variable type in my opinion. I think this is a variable type, but it's many variables. So we're going to say with what? Let's say the fill color, and this is the bar. What do we call that? This is the rail fill color. So give it a good name that you understand. The rail fill color, which is yellow right here, I'm going to put it in double quotes. I'm going to turn this into a variable. So rail fill color is yellow, ending bracket, comma, and then right down here where I have my fill, I'm going to say ampersand. Wait, double quotes, ampersand, rail fill color, ampersand, double quotes. So let's see here. So now we have rail fill color, right? This is now turning into a variable. We need an ending parentheses. So there we go. Now we have it as a variable with, let's change the color. So watch down here. So now in my with statement, if I change this to blue, it changes there. Yellow, it changes there. So we've turned that into a variable where we can define our complex SVGs with variables now. So now let's say we have rail fill color. Let's say handle fill color. And right now we have it as what color? We have it as a green. Green. And so this needs a comma here. And so now in the fill color, we're going to say, once again, ampersand, or double quotes, ampersand, handle fill color, ampersand, double quotes. Okay. And so now it's still green, but if we change this, to blue, and then we go to it, we can then see that it's now a blue color. This is where I think the width variable type is very important. I'm going to say this is a variable type that most people don't use a lot. And the main reason that I'm doing this is to add on to components. This is another great thing about components. And I'm sure there's different ways to do this, but I'm going to keep this simple this time. I'm going to create a new custom property. It's going to be of type text, right? And we're going to say this is rail fill color. And it's going to be in the description. This is the color of the rail in text form, right? We're going to need to write text. I'm going to say create. And now in my image, I'm going to say replace this rail fill color with component1 dot rail fill color. And right now it's black. But when we come to our screen and then we go to our component, you see we have a color here, and we can change this to green. And it changes to green. So look at that. It's now green here. So we've actually made a custom property, right? So yellow with, if we can write correctly, we can change the exact custom property as we would like. Now I'm sure there's a way to make this like the color picker if you want, but I just wanted to show how you can pass the components of those values also. Now I want to do something else. I want to do something really cool. Instead of this being a rectangle, I want this to be a gradient circle. I want it to be a gradient circle. So in order to do this, I'm going to kind of skip walking through everything of this. And so to do that, I'm actually going to add some space in here, right? So I'm going to add some space in here. And at the top of my SVG, I'm going to define a radial gradient. So you can see, I'm going to use DEF to do that. So this is my color. I've defined a color. Let's look in here. So I've defined a color, right? I'm defining a color with an ID of gradient 2. So I'm just calling it gradient 2. I can call it something else. Let's say we'll just call it gradient 1. So we can call it gradient 1. And I'm kind of just saying, hey, you know, give it a red with an opacity and then change it to yellow. And so this is just a radial gradient. So it starts in the center and changes colors from a circle. All right. But now, just because I define the color doesn't mean that it exists yet. It doesn't exist yet. So we could put this in a circle. So I'm going to put this in a circle. And you see right here, this is where the ID comes in. So I'm going to change that, and you can see now I have a gradient circle. That seems pretty good to me. And maybe if we change this to 0.95, or let's see, 9 and 9.5, let's try it again. So now I've turned this into a circle. And then if you remember, we did that stroke. So I'm gonna do stroke in here. Let's see, in the circle. And if you remember, to add that border on it, we just did stroke equals black and stroke width equals 1. Or missing a single quote here. There we go. So now, let's see, we have that in there. That looks good. Now I'm going to remove that blue square. This blue square is now removed. So it's fitting in there pretty much perfectly. I like the way that's looking. Now I want to take the colors here, and I want to pass those variables. So instead of red, we're going to say this is ampersand, or no, double quote ampersand, handle fill color ampersand double quote. All right, so that's 1. Then we'll say handle fill color 2. Handle fill color 2, and this will be a red. And so then this one will now be handle fill color 2. So now we have a blue and a red. I feel like it's terrible. Maybe this is actually an orange. So that looks really nice. Wow, does that look good? So that looks really nice. All right, so now let's replace these with actual component colors. So now I'm going to go to my component, new custom color, handle fill color 1, and it's of type text, and then handle fill color 2, and it's of type text. And now in our image, I'm going to replace them with the components. So this is actually handle fill color 1, handle fill color 2. Okay, so now everything is black here. That's fine. We're fine with that. All right, so now finally the last thing is the default color, right? It's setting it to text. So I'm going to go to component 1, and then you see how I have handle fill color equals text. Let's change this to red, and let's change the handle fill color 2 to orange. And then let's change we're missing one more, the rail fill color. Let's change this to, maybe we'll leave it as black. I kind of like that, black. And so now when we go to our screen, let's just delete the entire component. And then I add it back, insert component 1. It starts off with like a red and black color scheme. So there's my slider. So that is my first slider. What I'm really going to do is I'm going to have a few of these sliders. My goal is to have a few of these components in here. And actually this is going to be of type horizontal. And they're going to start over here. And then I'm going to have extra sliders in here. This is my goal. What we need to do is make sure our slider then goes up to 250. And here's one last tip. Let's say like when you click, it doesn't click just right. You're kind of up here, it doesn't click right. What you can do is go to your component and in the slider, increase the size of that handle. Although you can't see it, the handle size, increase that to like a 10. And so now when we're on our screen, it is going to pick that up no matter where you click, right? So if I'm down here, it's going to click on it. I'm here. So just kind of increase that handle size. Although you can't see it, it's going to fit in there perfectly. And that is how to make your own SVG slider. And so we can even change the colors of these, right? So the rail fill color, this will be green, and this one will be blue because we've turned these into variables. And then this one, let's see, this one will be yellow. And so now we have different colors for each of our sliders. They work very well. This is going to look really good on mobile, right? It's going to look really good on mobile, on canvas. Still not that bad. I love the sliders. So that's the start of my new project that I'm working on. I wanted to create a custom SVG component. Hopefully this was helpful. If you want to create your own SVG components, I'm going to put this, maybe I'll upload this to GitHub, number 1. And number 2, I will put the equation, the SVG equation, right? So I will put this SVG equation either, if I can't put it in the description, it'll be in a comment in the video on YouTube, and you can just copy this out. But we kind of walked through everything again. So let's walk through again. The important things that we walked through was using width to define our colors. And then we can pass in the component variables, right? So we're kind of using double variables. It's also very important to do encode.url as soon as you have complex SVGs. You need to use encode URL. Make sure this is of type XML and UTF-8. If you're going to do a gradient, then you define a color rate. So you're defining a gradient, you define a gradient color, and then you pass this ID down here to your fill color. So once again, you're using a variable. So you're passing this ID down to your circle. You could pass it down to the square if you wanted to, but this is the shape, right? This is the shape, and this is the color that you're defining as a variable once again. And then you can use stroke for borders. Oh, that's beautiful. Hopefully this was helpful. It's a short little video on SVGs and Power Apps. I think after this we can go more into my next project. I hope you're excited. I can't wait to talk about it. It's going to do with, I think we're going to end up doing media and voice. And I wanted to make sure to have those scroll bars with SVGs and make something custom. So thank you all for watching. Stay tuned, and I'll see you next week.